Good morning, Stewart's Chapel. This is Brother Don Pierson and Don Counts, and we're on the new Greenway over here at Stone Bridge Park. If you haven't been on it, it's pretty nice. Lots of squirrels. Anyway, we're in Amos chapter 6, verse 4 through 7, and here's what the word of the Lord says. You who lie on beds of ivory, stretch out on your couches. You eat lambs from the flock and calves from the midst of the stall, who sing idly to the sound of string instruments. And you invent for yourself musical instruments like David, who drink wine from bowls and anoint yourselves with the best ointments. But you are not grieved for the affliction of Joseph. Therefore they shall now go captive as the first of the captives, and those who recline at banquets shall be removed. This whole section has a lot of language in it that just reading through we can miss the meaning. So let me just unpack some of the words that mean different things to them than it would to us. This idea of beds of ivory, it communicated that even in their sleep, they live extravagant lives of excesses, beds of ivory. They stretch out on their couches. You got to understand that in most of that world, a couch was very rare. Only the rich had couches, and most of the beds were very, very different. I think that's one of the first things that people notice when they go to a third world country or Central America and they enter into a home. The first thing they notice is the absence of what you and I take for granted. For example, in a normal Mayan home, there are no couches, there are no beds. The tables and everything are handmade and very, very rough. There'll be a bench, a stool, a stump. Their hammocks will be thrown up over the banisters. When I went into Gaza and out of Israel many, many years ago on a relief ministry, the thing I noticed was we went into the homes, they were empty. There was nothing in the homes but pillows. They sat on the pillows, they ate on the pillows, they sat on the floor. In other words, there was none of the things that you and I take for granted. All the things that are most common in our life are things that come from wealth and prosperity. That's why the third world looks at us with amazement, because, see, the average American takes these things for granted. Well, that's the way it was. This was not the norm for most of the people, but this is the way the rich and and when I say rich, the people that took advantage of others lived. They also, it says, they ate calves from the midst of the stall. In other words, they didn't fatten them up. They ate of the most tender and the best. Generally, it was not like we do. We will fatten up a calf. The rich did that in Jesus' day. Remember the story of the prodigal son? The father was very wealthy. He had a fattened calf. But most of the people did not. When they ate beef, even in Belize, if they ate beef or pork, it was not one that they had fattened up. It was an old one. It was one ready. But they also ate of the lambs of the flock, the very best. And then it talks about music. They sing idly to the sound of string instruments. One of the commentaries on this talked about how their music was very different than David. Even though they used the musical instruments of David, David used his musical instruments to create songs to God. They create songs and music to themselves. Let me tell you something about music, especially in the biblical understanding. Music tells more about a people then we may want God to know the kind of music and what it focuses on and to whom it is to. Most of the music in America is not towards God. Most of the music in America is to us. And it's all about us. It's about our lives, our good lives, our broken lives, and on and on and on. That's the kind of picture that is here. They drink wine from bowls and anoint with the best ointments. Both of those things were instruments that were used, and they were sacred instruments used for worship. They take the bowls of worship and they fill them up and drink their wine. They anoint with the most sacred anointments. And then it says they're not grieved for the affliction of Joseph. That's kind of strange when you think about it. What in the world is he talking about? Well, if you remember, Joseph was sold into slavery. That was Joseph's affliction. You remember how this book starts to begin with? The rich, the wealthy, those who are in prosperity, they may not have literally sold captives, but they didn't do anything to stop it. The slave trade was very active in their day, and many of them contributed or benefited from it. So with all of this that God describes them, and then he says, therefore. And the therefore is directly related to the other. And so basically, this lists the sins that are common to having too much and a heart that is only for yourself. It creates an insensitivity to the needs of others around you. It creates an indulgence, a building of barns, more and more, better, better, never enough. It creates an insistent behavior in having your own way. It creates an irreligiousness towards holy things, a disrespect for that which belongs to God. And most of all, it creates a nature that lives most of their lives as though they were independent of God. Therefore, God says, therefore. I don't want a therefore in my life. I bet you don't either. Take a good look at your life, America, American Christians. You see, most of the language in Amos would describe my home, your home. Love you, Stewart's Chapel.